Good morning. Our last panel started off by a show of hands on different professions. How many in here are farmers? We got one, two. So while you guys are having lunch just after this, thank these guys because they produce enough food for y'all to eat for an entire year. Everyone in this room. Since most of us aren't farmers, I wanted to talk some and give everyone a better understanding of what agricultural water use is in Texas. And you hear the number a lot. Ag uses 56% of the total amount of water in Texas, that's true. What most people don't understand, though, is that 86% of that's groundwater, 11.6 is surface water, and 2.4 is a combination of surface and groundwater. And that's a very important thing as we start talking about reservoirs and competition between agriculture and reservoir storage. And see, Texas farmers also use the same amount of water today that they used in 1970, but they produce about 62% more commodities. There's a map I took, and this was taken from a publication done by the Texas Water Resources Institute. And again, 56% of the use only tells part of the story. So if you look at our usage in the state, you look at the two very high use areas here, and this is a comparison on this map here, and I'll come back to this later, but 2010 here, 2060 projections. So you see the agricultural water use in the state in these areas here, then you see municipal demand here, how it goes up in C, region G, region H, some in region K, region L, and region M here. But there's a disconnect between the total amount of water, if you look at aggregately, as opposed to where our need is. So over the last decade, maybe 2 decades, I think most folks don't understand that agriculture has invested hundreds of millions of dollars in infrastructure and water irrigation efficiencies. You know, today, roughly 80% of all acreage that is irrigated in the state is done with sprinkler irrigation, center pivots, as compared to 40% in 1990. That's a huge, huge investment. And it's improved irrigation efficiencies from maybe 60% up to 88 to 95%. So 13% of the state still uses furrow irrigation. Center pivots can't be used everywhere, and because of geographic issues, but also because some of the canal systems aren't set up to go through so you can use center pivots. And again, they use furrow irrigation, and there's also flood irrigation, particularly in the rice areas and some of the orchards. But investments have been made to laser level those lands. This is not an insignificant investment. You go through and you improve your efficiencies. If you can imagine on these rows here of having a hill in the middle of this and the amount of water it would take to go through and push that over. So these are precision leveled fields here. Also, you can notice that they aren't irrigating every single row. They go through and they alternate the rows. You go through, get different root zones, but also you can push the salts from one side to the other as you irrigate. The second picture I have here, and one thing I did want to note, and I think Laura Hoffman's going to be talking about this earlier or later in the day, but some of the flood irrigation areas, particularly rice, also serve as habitat for a number of shorebirds, and so it does have an ecological value as well. 3% of the state is using a drip or subsurface drip or trickle system, very high efficient irrigation systems, but they are cost prohibitive. If you go through and you look at the pictures here, you can see where you go through and you put water exactly where you need it. Again, about 98% efficient. Very much improved technologies. The second photo I have here is a surface drip. Again, you can see here's a poly pipe they're using on the side. Just imagine in the past they've gone through, run water through the dirt here than it's gone down the rows. So the benefits for irrigation: helps provide stability in production and prevents total losses during drought. It can double or triple crop yields, allows crops to be grown where they otherwise could not be grown at all, adds, and in Texas it's added $4.7 billion to the state economy. And just as a side note, irrigation accounts for about 40% of the total value of crops in the U.S. This chart here is basically just shows what gets irrigated in the U.S., and I think the top of that may be cut off a little bit, but this is just a list of crops that get irrigated. Probably a higher percentage in Texas of corn. I don't think we do sugar beets at all, but it gives you an idea of the things that do get irrigated. So planning for a future. This has been talked about at great length earlier in the morning, but drought frequency and duration seem to be worsening, and that's an issue. One thing I did want to note is that this is of May 16th. This is last Friday. But you notice that California is in severe drought, and most of our irrigation area, the higher use irrigation, is in this major drought as well. Well, California is not getting a lot of the water. They provide 40% of the produce that we use in the United States. Depletion of the Ogallala Aquifer, and I haven't seen this slide too many places. This is produced by Michigan State and some of the research they're doing. But I believe the state water plan calls for about 1.5 million acre-foot of depletion in the Ogallala between now and 2050, and that's going to continue to worsen. That's particularly in this area here, the southern plains here, but you also notice these other areas up in Nebraska and Kansas that are being depleted as well. Again, this means less supply available for agricultural irrigation. So, and then I guess the monkey or the gorilla in the room really is population growth. We're going to add 20 million people in Texas, but we're also adding between 100 and 200 million people in the U.S., and then 2 billion more people in the world. We have to understand what that's going to do to our food supplies and the kind of stresses that that's going to put on that. So agricultural today needs to produce 50% more crops than what we produce today in order to keep up with global demands. So, and the other point I wanted to make on this slide is just enough food's not enough. Because if we just have enough, then because of distribution, we pick winners and losers, and the folks that can afford to pay will have the food. But you know, you go to the supply and demands there. What's the social impact of that realization? Land use changes. So we're losing water. We're also losing land. Between 1982 and 2007, the U.S. lost 40 million acres of farm and ranch land to development. That includes 4 million acres of prime farmland. And in Texas alone, between 1997 and 2007, we lost about 1.5 million acres of farmland, prime farmland in Texas. And this map kind of indicates here the red areas are our areas of higher loss. So you see the growth areas here, South Texas, and then I think this is kind of aggregate here. Most of this is probably going to be around that El Paso area. But even in Lubbock and Amarillo, you can see losses and pressures that are being put on farmland. So how do farmers keep up with, and ranchers keep up with global and domestic demands for not just food, but also fuel and fiber? Well, this is a quote from Dr. Norman Borlaug, and for those that you don't know, he's credited with the Green Revolution and saving. He won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1970 and is credited with saving over 1 billion lives worldwide. It's like, I now say the world has the technology either available or well advanced in the research pipeline to feed on a sustainable basis a population of more than 10 billion people. The most pertinent question today is whether farmers and ranchers will be permitted to use this technology. So let's talk some about the technology. We have, I just kind of grouped these together with precision farming and irrigation. You know, farmers don't go out and they don't farm the same way they did in the 1970s. Most of them have iPhones. Most of them go through and they use apps. They use GPS. Some of these tractors have the capability of driving themselves. If you get inside one of these things, it looks like you're in the cockpit of an airplane. I don't know if y'all have done this or not, but they go through, there's variable rates on not just your fertilizer application. They can tell you how much they farm or how much they produce on certain sections as they go through. A high amount of technology in there. On the irrigation side, I use this, and it's a variable rate center pivot. So as they go through and look at these different zones, they can know how much water you can put out in the different zones, which areas need more, because your soils are different and your soil moisture may be different. Use of drones. This is, I guess, a fairly new technology and something that's not, it can be more controversial, but the use of drones over fields to go through and collect data about what the crop needs. And I understand that some of our members are starting to use these, and it's going to be a very interesting tool if you can afford to. So, second part of this, and no, I'm not talking about irrigation yet, but let's talk about improved crop varieties through selective breeding and biotechnology to boost yields and improve water efficiencies. We're talking about drought tolerance and drought resistance, pesticide and disease resistance. This is what, an armyworm here on an ear of corn. So if you go through and you can help it reduce the damages by those, you can improve your yields, and going through and having reduced acres makes your production more efficient, and I think will help us accomplish the goal. The second here, this is a rice field in Bangladesh. I pulled this picture off. There was an article the other day in The Economist, I believe, that talked about drought-tolerant breeds of rice that are helping improve efficiencies in some places. And anyway, these are technologies, though, that we have to advance, and we have to spend the dollars. Lots of research is being done in this in the private sector. This right here is being done by selective breeding, and it's not GMO. These are selective breeding techniques that are helping improve yields. So the slide here is better utilization of available acres. So we need to go through and look at the areas of the state where we can go through and produce, and we must take advantage of those. And the first two I think that one's New York, a rooftop garden here. Again, in the city, there are water availabilities there, and let's say you use the condensate from an air conditioner. You can go through and produce that. So moving forward and looking at 2060 and even further, because our population is not going to stop at 2050 or 2060. We're going to continue to go up, and the population projection for 2100 is 15 billion. So that's what, double what we have now. So worldwide. So we have to go through, and the last, this photo here is just of a concept, vertical farming, and that's, again, I don't want to go through and buy or pay for that, but something that at some point in the future our food production is going to need. So, and the last one here is continued agriculture irrigation. Long term, we need to maintain or increase the total number of irrigated acres, but we have to use the water more efficiently. We have to reduce our per acre usage, and we need to adopt technologies to reduce costs and improve efficiencies. So, and we need to plan for new alternative water sources where practical, and where we can join up with municipalities or other sectors, so we can go through and take advantage of those. And the scarcity of food, let's put the economics aside, because let's face it, you're never going to be able to go through it and compete with a computer when you're talking about your corn. That economics doesn't work, but every one of us eats breakfast every morning. We eat lunch and then we eat dinner, and we're going to have to continue to do that. That's an important part of economic growth. Again, back to this slide here. I don't know if y'all have any questions about, I guess we'll save the questions for the end. But again, very important to note that this is where your major water resources are. This is where your demand is. And look at the areas where you compete for water. So rice farmers in Region K haven't got water for the last 3 years. Interruptible customers for the Brazos River Authority and the Region G area have not gotten water in the last, or didn't get water this year. And we've already talked about Region M, where the municipalities already get precedent over agricultural water. So those are some issues, though, that we need to address. These are very good growing areas. Part of the problem, though, is that in the rice production areas, If you grow other crops, it does rain on occasion down there, and they get heavy rain, so you end up flooding out your crop and you lose your entire investment. Rice is very well suited for those areas, but we do need to go through though and improve efficiencies. I included this last slide here with my contact information. Does anybody know what that is? This is what we used in, I think it's in 1943 for the war, and there are lots of different ones that are different posters like that promoting agricultural production and promoting the fact that we have to conserve food. We were talking about going through and rationing food in the 1940s for the war effort. So I just thought it was interesting. You go through and see how things have changed, and we have now at least one, usually, well, really two generations that have never known what food scarcity is, but that's our future if we don't plan for it now. Thank you all.